This week, I tested Alienware's M15x gaming laptop. It's not a MacBook or a netbook, this is a dedicated gaming machine that's meant to replace your desktop. It's packed with bleeding-edge components that rival what you'll find in a very good gaming rig. But of course, it's a notebook, which means you can lug it around to LAN parties, work trips, or family reunions. There's no way you'll mistake this machine for anything but a gaming laptop. With its angled profile and ample LED lighting, this thing looks extremely sleek and aggressive. Alienware has always been known for its unique visual styling, and M15x lives up to that reputation. The front evokes the grille of an American muscle car, and the backlight behind the speakers is a pretty nice touch. Open up the lid though, and the notebook looks just as badass on the inside. The 15.6-inch glossy screen has a 1080p resolution and a generous view angle, though we didn't notice some backlight bleed near the top of the screen. I also didn't like how much bezel space there is around the screen, since it made the display look smaller than it actually is. Also on the aesthetic front, the Alienware Command Center software lets you change the colors on 10 different parts of the laptop. So if you really want a keyboard that's half green and half purple, you can have one. Speaking of the keyboard, the M15x is full-sized, not too loud, and pretty comfortable to type on. And although there is no numpad, the placement of the arrow keys and the function keys was pleasant to use. However, I really didn't like the touchpad. I found the touchpad was less smooth and responsive than I'd like for navigating the desktop, and though I increased the sensitivity using the included software, it still wasn't accurate enough for my taste. You're definitely going to want to use a mouse. However, the under-the-hood hardware is crucial. This system shipped with a quad-core Core i7 920X CPU, which is Intel's fastest mobile processor based on the Halem architecture. And seriously, this thing is fast. By default, it's clocked to 2 GHz, which isn't terribly exciting, but turbo mode automatically clocks the system up to 3.2 GHz when you really need the speed. Encoding the MPEG TV rip to H.264, for example, took only 2.5 minutes, compared to the 7.5 minutes it took on a 2.5 GHz Core 2 Duo MacBook Pro. The M15x also sped through our Photoshop script benchmark in 3 minutes, which is twice as fast as the Core 2 notebook. When it comes to gaming, the M15x is very respectable. Its GPU is an NVIDIA GTX 260M with a 1GB frame buffer. The GTX 260M is based on NVIDIA's G92 core, so it's more akin to the 9800 GTX desktop card than the GTX 260 on the desktop, but it does run at higher clock speeds than the older desktop products. It's actually not the fastest mobile graphics chip available, and it's not running an SLI configuration, but the GTX 260M is actually the best GPU Alienware offers for the M15x, which is a little surprising. To test the M15x's gaming capabilities, we ran Crysis, Far Cry 2, and Dirt 2 benchmarks, with the game settings maxed out and then the screen's native 1920 by 1080 resolution. Far Cry 2 and Dirt 2 ran at 31 frames per second and 51 frames per second respectively, which is great for a notebook. Crysis, though, was where the M15x met its match, and we topped out at 13 frames per second in DX10 mode. Turning down the resolution will help, but you'll really need to lower the quality settings to get playable frame rates in Crysis. The whole time, though, we noticed that the M15x was remarkably quiet for a gaming notebook. Alienware did a really good job with the fan and ventilation design so you can actually hear the game you're playing. The machine drew 48 watts on idle and 135 watts when running on a full load. That's more than a non-gaming Core 2 laptop, but much less than a desktop. The M15x has a bunch of different RAM and storage options. Ours was spec'd with 4GB of DDR3 RAM and a 500GB hard drive. But we found it was pretty easy to open up the chassis on the bottom and upgrade the RAM and drive yourself. We don't recommend getting the 9-cell battery for this type of laptop. Our 9-cell with a test unit only lasted 80 minutes on a full charge, so it couldn't even finish viewing a 2-hour movie. And any gaming you'll do on this machine will have to be done while tethered to the power outlet. The other perks are nice and pretty standard for a high-end notebook. There's a Blu-ray slot drive option, VGA and DisplayPort outputs, an Ethernet jack, 2 USB ports, and eSATA and FireWire ports. Windows 7 Ultimate came pre-installed with no additional software except for Alienware's Command Center utility, its System Restore software, and Cyberlink Power DVD. Props to Alienware for passing on the crapware. The M15x starts at $1,200, but the one Alienware sent to us was maxed out at $3,250. That's more than the price of a high-end gaming desktop, so we'd expect better gaming performance on the mobile side. Unfortunately, the M15x is a bit of a mixed bag. We thought having an ultra-fast Core i7 mobile GPU would be enough, but it seems like the GPU just isn't keeping pace. The M15x is a great mobile workstation, but the graphics power leaves much to be desired, as evidenced by our Crysis benchmark scores. If you're going to pay $3,000 for a gaming laptop, you'll want the best gaming experience possible. The M15x, unfortunately, comes just short of that.